You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Another day, another live stream on a southwest Indian Ocean cyclone. It's certainly getting to feel that way with another successive major tropical cyclone bearing down on Madagascar this evening. Cyclone Emnati, which peaked a while back, seems to be on a bit of a weakening trend, down to a 100 mile per hour category 2 according to the latest from Météo-France. It currently has two eye walls. You can see it there. It's got its inner eye wall and eye is hanging on, although it looks like it might be about to disintegrate at last. It's been that way for quite a few hours now, as it closes in those miles to the coast of Madagascar. My name is Nathan Foy in the studio once again with more live coverage, and thanks to my team for providing coverage on previous days during this storm. And today I'm joined by my team, which right now we have Coley, Dimitri and Magic. Hello to all of you this evening.
Hi.
Good afternoon where you are.
Afternoon. Hello. There in the US out
it's
west.
Still morning, right?
Yeah,
Yes, still morning there. Time zones. Afternoon here and evening where this storm is. We try to stick to the local time zones where possible. It's currently just after 6 p.m. Eastern African time. And this is the main feature, obviously, in the world right now. This tropical cyclone, which, as mentioned, winds of 100 miles per hour. That's 160 kilometers per hour sustained, and a central pressure of 958 millibars. Massive dry air over Madagascar right now ahead of the storm, which it's just brushing aside. And in general, the storm's still looking decent, although the cloud tops are wasting away a little bit in general, certainly in those latest frames. As always, if you've got any comments or questions for us during our stream, you can send us a message. Joe Alves, thank you very much for your support this evening, and we hope you're enjoying the stream. And if you've got any questions, we'll do our best. So let's first talk to Coley, who is showing us a stream, and see what you think of this question. Does it have a double eye?
Well, first of all, does it have a double eye? Well, it has a double eye wall. Yes, it does. The storm has been going through an eye wall replacement cycle the past day or two, which means it does have a double eye wall structure. But on my screen, you can see I've been looking at the models recently, and there's still some decent uncertainty, even though it's not that far out with the storm and where it's going. You can see the HWRF model as we go forward in time. It does strengthen a little bit, actually remains steady, but what's interesting is that it just brushes the shoreline of far southern Madagascar, which definitely is a good thing. The wind impacts won't be as bad, but definitely, even if it doesn't make landfall, which I doubt it, but even if it just brushes the shoreline, we'll still have flooding rain. You can see red, orange, and yellow over southern Madagascar. And if we go earlier along the coast here, other models, we can look at the GFS. Similar solution, maybe slightly further west. It makes landfall in this solution, meaning the HWRF is definitely a southern outlier. We can look at the Euroho. which shows it much further north than the other models. It makes landfall around here where my mouse is.
Now that's a more concerning scenario because it would have less time to weaken.
Yeah, and the winds would be worse because, yeah, like you just said, it would have less time to weaken. But what's important to notice is that even if it does weaken, even if it goes further south, the rains will be very bad. Flooding, mudslides will be a very large concern no matter what happens.
I've not had much chance to look at the precipitation values yet, and we'll be able to look at this together when I get my model views up soon. But suffice to say, in the area that will be getting the potential landfall, likely landfall, it's going to be very high rain amounts for the southeastern corner of Madagascar. Just looking at indications here, possibly 500 millimeters. So we'll look at that into more detail shortly. And in terms of the winds, we could be looking at Category 2 winds along the coast, and it's getting closer. You know, it's already getting quite close when I'm just trying to get back this imagery, which shows that one of the outer bands is already affecting Toamasina, which is about, was it 300 kilometers away, a little bit more than that, and what we're expecting is that this inner eye wall and eye is going to die and the outer one takes over, and it'll have a massive eye by the time we get to morning, and then you'll get the winds pretty soon after that, I would imagine. A question there, will it make landfall as a Category 1 or will it retain its strength? I'm still thinking it might get there as a Category 2.
Yeah, it really depends on how much time it has to weaken, the exact path, if the hour replacement cycle finishes, and really what the storm decides to happen. There's a lot of different outcomes with that. But as I was saying before, the exact strength doesn't matter. You're still going to get heavy winds and lots of rain wherever it makes landfall, or even if it doesn't make landfall nearby.
Now, Kin sent us a graphic in one of our channels showing the warning zones. There you can see it's in French. The red zone is for obviously imminent danger. The yellow is, I believe, a warning of sorts, a less severe one. And the green, I think, is an advisory. That's where they have the worst of it going on right now. They are actually expecting a landfall much further north than those models too. They're expecting that to be, I'm trying to get familiar with my places here along the coast, but they're expecting that landfall to be, it's very hard to get your bearings on this very flat coastline. And things aren't loading very fast here. But I think, as far as I can see, it's just north of, is it Manakura? Which would be rather interesting because only the European model, as you've said there, is showing anything like that. Manakara. So, and that is a pretty close to Batsarai's landfall zone, I think. Let's talk to Dimitri. What are your thoughts on the storm right now?
I wasn't surprised that it was going through a weakening trend. I was there on yesterday's live stream, and it was only starting to go through its IWA replacement cycle, and was not surprised it was going to drop a bit in strength. I was looking at the multi-model diagnostic comparisons, and what I've noticed is that it's basically out of time to really strengthen back because the shear is going to skyrocket starting in a few hours. The SSTs, sea surface temperatures, they're going to drop slightly, though it's still pretty good. And while the mid-level relative humidity is going to actually increase, it's still it's the wind shear that's really a factor right now. Right now there's like not a, right now that's barely a lot. Right now that is barely any wind shear at all, but that's going to increase over the coming 2 or 3 days.
Now, interestingly, the earlier forecast, the 9 a.m. from the JTWC, had this storm strengthening a little bit more before landfall. There it is, their forecast track from earlier today. I imagine, I mean, you can only think that they might go back on that a little bit. Let me just see if I can see their reasoning for what they were going with back then. Do they do updates at 3 p.m. in this location, or are they 12-hourly updates? Because I always forget which one's where. Yes, it's 12-hourly updates here, so we won't actually get another update until, like, local time midnight, so... But from this morning's reasoning, it was talking about, let's see, they are talking about different observations that they were getting and how there's a lot of uncertainty about it. The core convective signature was fluctuating rapidly. Not much talking about the actual forecast in there. Oh, there it is. Sorry, it's further down. I'm just reading as we go along here, as we look at the forecast chart on our screen. Alright, this is what they said. Once the new eye wall is established, the strong outflow aloft and low shear will allow for renewed intensification. They're saying low shear. Limited remaining time over water will prove to be tough barriers to significant intensification, expected to weaken slightly just before landfall. So first step, it's got to get rid of that inner eye wall, and then their money is on wind shear to be low, which is not what you were seeing just then, Dimitri.
Right now wind shear is low from what I can tell, but like all I'm saying is that there's not a lot of time for the storm to strengthen.
Okay. All right. And just along here, this is the Météo-France forecast map as well. They expect strengthening just before landfall to become an intense cyclone once again. So that's another interesting angle on this. When you look at the agencies, they can't agree with each other. Well, actually, no, they do agree more with each other, but the model's going way south of what all the agencies are saying. So that's a very fascinating discrepancy. JTWC has a major landfall. Météo-France has a major landfall. But the models aren't really showing anything of the sort. So with all that in mind, Coley, looking back at those models, any further thoughts?
I mean, you can see we have an upper level anticyclone, which is just an area of high pressure aloft. This is providing some northerly shear on the system, not enough to cause significant weakening even in general. But what this can do, looking at some other models that I'm not going to pull up right now, it shoves most of the heaviest rainfall to the south of where the low makes landfall, or where the low is, which is interesting because it shows you don't have to be where it makes landfall to get heavy rains and flooding and bad impacts. So yeah, that's what shear is doing right now. It's not going to weaken it, but it could change where the heaviest and where the worst impacts are.
All right, thank you. Let's take a look back at the latest satellite imagery showing the storm's progress. Here it is right now. Get a latest position estimate on that. Just get up my tools. There was also some other comments there as well. When will Emnati hit Madagascar? That's probably just about a day away, but again, it really depends on where the landfall is, whether it's trying to delay that or not. It's certainly trying to delay the eye-wall replacement cycle. It's still holding on. Alright, latest is that the centre of the storm's inner eye is 332 kilometers from Toamasina. So that's distance from land right now, and gradually moving currently west-southwest, although it's hard to tell. The inner eye wobbling in a different direction sometimes as the outer eye is, and that's something that you will see in these situations. In a moment I will have my model graphics, which will show us more clearly what the GFS is putting out, and we'll go around the world with that as well. But we'll also take a look at rainfall expectations too. But at least, well, on that GFS forecast, let's just say that tropical storm force winds they're expecting to arrive before midnight, probably at about 10 p.m. and for the hurricane force winds to arrive onshore at about 7 p.m. tomorrow. And a question there about, will we do landfall coverage? Of course we will. I mean, some people think it's the most important part, and in a way it is. Personally, I think the early warning is the most important part, because not as many people cover it, and it's very important to iron out the uncertainty as best we can, and to keep people well informed. But yes, we will have all of that and video updates on the regular as well. Of course, you can also follow our social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. Search Force 13 all in text, and you'll find any updates that are external from our videos, images and graphics and all kinds of other stuff. But if you've just joined us, this is Cyclone Emnati, which has sustained winds of 160 kilometers per hour and higher gusts, a central pressure of 958 millibars, gusts probably nearing 200 kilometers per hour, and a little bit of confusion regarding the intensity forecast, given that all of the agencies, JTWC, Météo-France, Madagascar, all calling for the storm to make landfall further north than what most of the models are saying, and for it to strengthen a little bit before it gets there, although right now it has weakened a bit because it's stubbornly refusing to unravel that inner eye. Now, people asking about the CDPS rating. What's the latest?
I'm not really... Go on.
Yeah, we've just had an update, actually, so... Coley?
Oh, no, the last time I checked, it was CDPS Stage 8, which was like an hour ago or so, but that might have dropped. I'm not sure.
It still is, because Stefan updated just at the start of our show. He's calling for the landfall in 24 hours. Wind major, size major, rain major/extreme, total major/extreme. CDPS score 45.5, which is a stage 8, which is pretty serious.
Very, very.
I mean, I'm trying to think about other storms that are stage 8s that we've had recently. I'm struggling, but those who follow us and those ratings will know that stage 8 is not very common, particularly when we get this close to a landfall.
Someone asked what category is this. This is a category 2 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, which could change if given a number of factors as time goes on. Actually, eventually it will weaken, but in the short term, it might strengthen a little bit after the hour replacement cycle finishes, but it's hard to tell. But right now it's category 2.
And many people might think that category 2 isn't very much. CDPS stage 8, that might tell you otherwise. You know, it's a very serious situation, mainly for rainfall, which I'm going to be showing you in a moment. We can go to the model now, the GFS. I don't know where our bars have gone. Oh, well, there it is. I've got to keep all of the interface up. Right, this is the current look at the storm from the GFS initialization, showing the winds there at around 105 miles per hour, 110 there in a little area, in a very big eye. Let's move it forward. GFS here actually does call for that intensification again too. Look, this 120 miles per hour there, that's 100 and I think it's 180, 190 kilometers per hour there. If the GFS is correct, that's early morning tomorrow around sunrise. And then you can see the hurricane force winds reaching land as the storm dips further southwards. Here it's a category 2 again. That's tomorrow evening, 9 p.m. local time. There's landfall from the GFS model as a category 1 with 80 mile per hour winds, 120 kilometers per hour, 130. At about 5 a.m. on Wednesday, if the model is correct, moves inland there, still holding on to some hurricane force winds for a brief time, and then continuing southwards, and off it goes into the southern abyss, although it does hold on for a time, and then it turns post-tropical, and it's still traceable on the end of at the end of the 7-day period as it moves off towards the southwest, and looks like a lack of steering. And then, would you believe it, at the end of day 7 you've got another hurricane strength storm appearing onto the scope here. That forms from further east and actually develops into a tropical cyclone around there possibly, and that is on Wednesday evening. And then that could become our next significant tropical cyclone, and goodness knows where that's going to go. I have ventured a look at the long range. It looks like that one will sail east of the Mascarene Islands. Just take you on a quick look around the world over what's to go on in the next few days. Rumblings of a tropical cyclone affecting northern Australia, the Northern Territory. You can see it there, all those green areas, that's tropical storm force winds. And possibly 2 systems trying to develop. There's another one, and there's the first one, much broader. That's on Thursday, although it starts to develop on Wednesday. And in the long range, it develops a little tropical cyclone there, which eventually gets its act together in the long range period in the Coral Sea. We'll see how that develops. And this thing here, which may become a tropical cyclone or may turn post-tropical before it gets the chance, as it moves on down there in the South Pacific. So a lot going on in the southern hemisphere, but back to Emnati, so that we can have a look at the total precipitation. And this loop will take a while to load as well, but you can see the colors just going crazy as the storm gathers pace. So what this graphic shows is the accumulated precipitation from now until 7 days. So you'll see that the colors just get brighter and brighter as time goes on because it's looking at accumulations. I don't know what's going on with that. And you'll see there some green areas that denotes 14 inches of rain, which apparently is the top end of this scope here for some reason. And 14 inches is 350 millimeters, so it's easily going to top that in some areas of the southeast, all around that area here. Let me just mark that. Looking all around this area. Go ahead.
Something I want to mention, as you were looking at the models before and the rainfall now, the worst might be shoved to the south, generally of where the center goes, due to the shear, including the winds and the rain. The northern side might still get some bad impacts, but the worst might be towards the south.
That's where the GFS has marked for the most amount of rainfall, 350 millimeters, all inside this area. So, any populated places in there? Let me just go and check. I know there's a few hilly areas down there, you can tell just looking at the map. For some reason the place names are loading really slow. Obviously we're not fully familiar with these areas. So you've got the large town or city of Tulanaro, which is right on the southeastern corner, just south of where the highest rainfall will be. There are some mountains in that area, some small localities, Ezoambo, if anyone knows that, Rano Matfana, two towns that would be right in the highest amounts of rainfall that you'll be looking out for serious issues. But generally that area is not heavily populated, quite sparse, as is most of the east coast, to be honest, apart from a few towns and cities that dot the place. Manakara, of course, that's something that we'd be worried about with the storm arriving there. Manajari as well, Mananjari, which has also received Batsarai. And let's just have a little look, go back to the full picture for the inland locations. Not too bad when you look across the whole region inland, not really very bad. It's coastal regions that will be getting a lot of that rainfall. Look towards the Mananjari area, maybe 8 inches, which is 200 millimeters. But the main concern is right down there, that southeastern corner. Let me just also point out that it's still showing a further 4 inches of rain for the island of Reunion. So that's a good 100 millimeters still to come. And let's just take a look at just how it happens with the reflectivity charts, showing you a sort of crude simulation on how you might expect to see it on radar as it comes through. So there's the start of that projection, just waiting for more frames to load in. Red zone showing extremely heavy rainfall and high rain rates, which is quite often what causes the flooding. Very high rain rates when it makes landfall there. So that is something to be looking at very closely too. Let's go back to some current imagery. There's everyone talking on our team.
Okay,
Yes.
so 2 points. First point is apparently southern Madagascar is dealing with a drought of some sort. And it was mentioned in the last live stream that yes, it would be great to have the rain, but you don't want to have that much rain from a tropical cyclone. And second, what was the CDPS for Batsarai? Because apparently, Meteo Madagascar is saying that Emnati might be slightly stronger.
I mean, there's strength, but there's also the other issues. But Batsarai was a stage 8 as well. I don't. Hold on. The score has dropped slightly right now. I'm just checking here. If I'm not mistaken, this storm has peaked at 46.2 points, and Batsarai was 46.3. So 0.1 in it. So these two, I suppose, are very comparable storms in terms of its potential impacts. And as people are pointing out in the comments, let's not forget, this is the 4th tropical cyclone impact for Madagascar this season. Ana, Batsarai, Damako, and now Emnati.
Oh.
Ajit, go ahead.
The comment says, will hills in Madagascar affect Emnati? The tropical storm autumn around 91.3. It's a question.
Well, obviously that the hills and the mountainous regions will weaken the storm, but it won't really matter because the strength of the storm will already have been felt before any appreciable weakening occurs, unless you're on the southwestern side of the island, which, you know, things should be less serious. So, latest on this satellite imagery, they've just repositioned it, so that's why we've got a little bit of glitchy imagery there. But on that latest frame, again, just that eye is just hanging on by a thread. And that's potentially good news, because the eye hanging on really means that there's not going to be any further strengthening. So if that eye holds on, the longer it does so, then the more chance this storm has of not strengthening. There you can see it once again on the satellite-derived rainfall chart. And just to give you a little key on that chart, the little bit of green and yellow moving into Toamasina there, that's around 10, maybe 15 millimeters per hour of rainfall. That's the rain rate. So you could suggest that, you could argue that maybe 5 millimeters of rain might have fallen there just from that band. Looking further south, areas that you can't see on the screen, there's a little shower occurring to the west of Manakara right now, but generally there isn't that much rain occurring over land just yet, but that will change soon. We're here for the hour. You can send us a message live on the air, comments and questions at type Force 13 all in text, and it will light up for us and we'll be able to get responding to your questions.
Yes. I think the more dangerous is the floods.
No doubt, it's going to be rainfall and flooding. We already saw
but
that.
It's a big flooding. This is a problem.
Any particular locations?
Let me see. Vato, Vato in Madagascar. If you look, almost in, so close.
Okay. Areas that have received, I mean, you know, I would probably be most concerned about the areas that Batsarai affected. I'm not sure if those locations are in that, but considering that that area just had that storm that moved through, and let's not forget that that was less than 3 weeks ago. So there's really not been very much time at all. And there's been another storm since then. My goodness. And we could be looking at significant rainfall amounts of over 200 millimeters for the area that BATSIRAI affected directly. And further south, you could be looking at up to 400 millimeters of rain. And let's not forget that BATSIRAI, the area that made landfall, delivered in some places over 500 millimeters of rain. The highest number, I think, was 556. So much more to come. Not good.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And Zaki says the fact that this season started very late but the impacts were felt in Madagascar shocks me. It is, you know, this was a very late starting season. It was, if you're going by named storms, the latest start to the season since, I think, well, bearing in mind that they didn't name storms back then, but things that were nameable, the latest start to a season since 1943.
It was the 20th of January with Anna, right?
Yeah, and if it was just a day or two later, it would have been the latest start to a season since 1923, which is 99 years, which is just ridiculous. I think 1942, sorry, was the last record, but nonetheless, it's just a completely different time period. Such a long time since we had a late start to a season, but as you can see, this tells us all you need to know. I don't know what just happened there. Late starts to seasons has no bearing on the impacts that you may receive during these seasons, and Madagascar has really had a gutful this season, with another one on the way. If you've just joined us, this is our hour-long update on Cyclone Emnati, which currently has winds of 100 miles per hour. That's 160 kilometers per hour winds sustained, with a central pressure of 958 millibars. That's the latest information according to Météo-France. This eyewall replacement cycle is resulting in a much larger wind field, which will affect a much larger area by the time the storm gets close to land. But the biggest threat, as always, as usual, in this area will be the rain, which, as we mentioned, could top 350 millimeters in the southwestern part of Madagascar. All the winds that we show on our international broadcasts is 1 minute sustained. Just wanted to put that out there because there was a comment just then. Because we always like to keep the same standard across all of our video updates. We always use 1 minute sustained winds everywhere in the world so that we can just compare things more easily, I suppose. Latest imagery there showing that the northern and the eastern side is packing the most rainfall, at least suggested rainfall from the satellite-derived estimates. And another question there, are eyewall replacement cycles bad? It will be bad if it completes the eyewall replacement cycle quickly, because then it will have a small window to intensify further. If it continues to lumber about here with two eyewalls and the inner one refuses to give way, then the storm won't make much more progress and it will struggle to gain further intensity. And that would be good news. So as long as you see that inner eye wall and that outer eye wall there, the storm is limiting itself to an extent, but it will still be pretty strong. A question there, will Emnati be a low-end Category 1 or a high-end tropical storm when it hits southern Madagascar? Well, you saw the GFS, it will be a low to mid Category 1. But if it makes landfall further north, like some of the agencies are suggesting, let's just stay real here. The JTWC on their latest forecast still calling for a Category 3 landfall, so let's not forget that. But it's looking very unlikely that that will actually happen. Go ahead.
in this curve says how fast is moving their storm.
Yeah,
How fast?
that's a good question. I've not actually fully checked that. I can take a look at how far it's moved in the last 5 hours and get a vector here. So we continue to look at that imagery. Let's go back to the latest RAM imagery. Give you another look. Struggling to get the frames loaded properly here on my end. So do be patient and I'll let you know on that movement speed. So there's the satellite imagery once again, a real gap opening on the southwestern side. That eye's surely not got long left when you look at that.
I have another question in this curve. It say how much time left to landfall.
Yes, that's something else that we're not sure about. If the landfall occurs further south, then you're looking at the landfall time to be at around late night, early hours of the morning into Wednesday. But if the storm makes landfall further north, like the agencies are suggesting, then it could be tomorrow afternoon.
I was looking at the multi-model diagnostic comparison, and there might be the GFS has this thing a little bit further inland compared to the HWRF, which has this thing kind of like clipping it, and then the CTCX is kind of further out to sea a bit there. So
Okay.
I'm going to ask the question now, will there even be a landfall?
Oh, don't go there yet. It's looking... let's just look at what it's doing right now, and its movement is sort of west-southwest looking at that imagery. So that would certainly give me concerns that it's not turning further southwest yet. It would still be very much on course for an actual landfall. Another comment there, what's your team's take on how strong the storm is? What do you guys think right now? Would you agree with the 100 miles per hour from Météo-France?
I would agree,
Yes,
because
yeah, I'd agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
No voices of dissent there. Looks like we've got good agreement for the 100 miles per hour. I think it might be just a little bit higher. But certainly not category 3. Let's get that right. I'm trying to get a read on how far this storm has moved in the last 6 hours. But the frames aren't loading properly. It's going to be something like 110 kilometers in 6 hours. So let's try and divide that by 6. That would be nearly 20 kilometers per hour. West-southwest. So that's the sort of movement we're getting from it at the moment. Probably about 18 kilometers per hour. Coley, you've returned. You had a little break earlier. Anything you want to say just now?
The new GFS is coming out now. It has shifted very slightly north, at least at what I'm seeing, and a little bit stronger, which is a little bit interesting.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. As someone was saying, talking about whether it will make landfall or not, I doubt it won't make landfall. Most models, in fact, basically all models show it making landfall. Actually, let's see. It's all coming out. We only have 18 hours out so far because the GFS just started coming out like 5 minutes ago.
It has.
Yeah.
But
so
pivotal weather's usually quicker. If you want to have a look there.
Yeah, I could look there.
Just to see if we've got the latest or more info. whilst we wait for that, let's see if we can look at another kind of imagery. Here's the water vapor imagery once again, showing the storm's progression. Water vapor imagery is a better kind of imagery usually for looking at the storm's inner structure. Once again, you can see that eye is holding on by a thread, that inner eye. And then you've got the enhanced infrared. A little bit out of date, this one though, so don't read too much into it. It does show the eye, inner eye wall strengthening a little bit there, but that latest image is probably maybe an hour old now, or 45 minutes. Let's go back to Coley's model.
Yeah, so, let's see, this is 33 hours out.
33.
967 millibars. This is right at the coast right here. But something I want to mention is that most of the precipitation is on the southern side. I don't see any colors on the northern side here. Everything is on the southern side. And in fact, the shear, which is causing it to, the precipitation and winds to be displaced to the south, what's it called? It might be weakening the system a little bit here. 6 hours earlier, it was 961. Now it's 967. 6 hours after. I'm not sure. I can't see if this is on the coast or made landfall yet. I don't think it did. But that is something to watch out for. I think this year might prevent significant re-strengthening. It might not be enough to prevent strengthening at all, but it might prevent some really rapid strengthening after the hour replacement cycle finishes.
All right. We're here for another 10 minutes or so here on Force 13 Live, covering the latest on Cyclone Emnati. If you have any comments or questions for us, do send them in. We expect landfall, if the agencies are correct, the GTWC and the Meteo-France forecast, they're calling for a landfall to be in about, I think, 24 hours. Meteo-France calling for the landfall to be, yeah, pretty much exactly 24 hours from now. Maybe add on an hour or two. They are expecting strengthening. We're not sure whether that's actually going to happen, considering what the storm's doing right now. The inner eye wall looks like it's about to give up. If that does happen, the outer eye wall, the much bigger one, will take over, and we could then see a little bit more strengthening again before the landfall. Otherwise, if that eye wall, the inner eye wall, holds on, then it's going to be a detriment to the storm's progress, and it will slow things down a little bit. So that's what we're probably going to have to hope for. More questions whilst we look at it right now. The track there from the JTWC forecast. The storm's strongest winds and heavy rains are in the southeast quadrant? Question mark. Right now it's northeast, but I imagine that's going to be changing when the storm interacts with land. And that's what's going to do it, isn't it, Coley?
I believe it's actually the wind shear too that's going to shove the worst rain and winds to the southeast and southern side too. The land interaction could also enhance that. So I'm on Tropical Tidbits here, looking at the models here, so I could see trends with the GFS. You can see the last run, a little bit further south and slightly weaker. This run is slightly further northwest and stronger. What should be noted is that, models aren't perfect. It's really hard to tell what will happen. There's a lot of spread, even though it's not that far out. We're only 36 hours out here. I could say it could, the most extreme possibilities is that it could miss land completely, but not that probably won't happen. I'm just talking like the very, very minimal probabilities here, or it could go as far north as like middle of Madagascar, or like a little bit northern than that, a little bit more north than this.
Well, let's face it. Looking at GFS ensembles, about 40% of the ensemble members have it not hitting Madagascar landfall. However, even if it stayed a few miles offshore or 100 miles offshore, they'll still be getting tropical storm force winds. We got to absolutely reiterate that to make sure that people know that landfall is not the be all and end all of these storms. I know, I think it gets symbolized way too much, that the landfall is obviously, visually it's a symbol of the storm hitting land, but it doesn't have to do that at all to cause pretty poor conditions.
There's a question regarding the eye temperature.
Yes, I did have a look at that just now. It's probably about -5 degrees. I don't have a proper read on it though.
That is interesting, considering that that yesterday it was around 16 Celsius. So I'm not sure if it was based off the I'm not sure if a lot of it was based off of the IWAR replacement cycle really doing a number on Emnati, but considering the temperatures are lower, that generally means a weaker storm, right?
Yes, it's most likely. You were talking about 16 degrees yesterday. That implies a much stronger storm. This is really what you would expect, and the eye temperature is not particularly relevant. We're looking more at the structure right now. When the eye wall replacement cycle is complete, eye temperature may become more important again, although there won't be very much time for it to re-strengthen, as we've been mentioning.
Right, and there's also a question. A lot of people are arguing that there's another storm in Southwest Indian Ocean. I think it's Fisayo, but I'm not sure the JTWC has actually confirmed it.
I don't know. Météo-France named it. That's all that really matters. It was, I think, a tropical storm, personally. You can still trace it. It's way down at 48 degrees south now. But it was a very short-lived system, and with these short-lived ones, usually in this fashion, ones that are blowing up as they go baroclinic and trying to turn extratropical, often in those cases one agency misses it or agencies disagree, or but irrelevant really, it didn't affect land.
Okay.
Let's see if we can take a look at some more imagery. We don't have that many to show off. I know that Coley, you're looking at Zoom Earth right now. Fazil's remnants are down there somewhere, around 48 degrees south. And obviously you can see Emnati's progress.
I don't know, I was just looking at it because why not? Really quiet otherwise around the world. The only real disturbance we have at the moment is Emnati. So we do have a little bit, at least at the very least, some time to what's it called?
To watch this, sure, but there's plenty more on the way if the GFS has its way. Australia in 72 hours, South Pacific in next week. Even the Western Pacific might wake up next weekend.
Another question. Another commenter said, I haven't been keeping up with this storm, so is this the strongest or fastest Emnati has been so far? The answer is no, it was much stronger yesterday.
Yep.
And will Madagascar get high waves from Emnati?
Yes.
Well, is it already at that point because it's pretty close to land as it is?
Of course they are. I don't know how high, but they definitely will. Just trying to figure this out. Usually the JTWC have the height of the seas at where the storm is at sea, but actually not showing any information about that just now.
I'd like to mention, people are wondering about the Iowa replacement cycle. I gotta explain it a little bit. Basically, what an Iowa replacement cycle is that in tropical storms and hurricanes in general, we do have the worst winds and heaviest rain, really. I mean, not the heaviest rain, but the worst winds in a ring around the eye, which is a calm. After time, another band that tries to become the strongest winds tries to replace the smaller one. During this cycle, this tropical cyclone does weaken, but if it does finish it, it could re-strengthen again, and the worst impacts grow, and the worst winds grow in size. So Iowa replacement cycles are not people mistaken it as being bad good because it weakens the storm, but it could just create worse impacts. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Indeed, it widens the wind field, and in this instance, it will give the storm one more shot at intensification if it completes the eye wall replacement cycle. As of now, though, it hasn't. It is still, the inner eye wall is still holding on stubbornly, and it's in our best interest to be rooting for it, because that would stunt the storm's further intensification, although it's still a category 2 at this point. It's not good news for Madagascar. We'll be finishing up shortly. More questions just now. Can we bring back the strongest quakes of the year on the Earthquakes channel? Sam is working on that. We have people who are trying to get the Earthquakes channel more functional. For those who don't know, though, incidentally, we do have that Earthquakes channel, which we started a year or two ago, which has a 24-hour stream showing everything that goes on in that field, and trust me, it's quite a lot. But here on the Forster Team main channel, this is where we cover all of the tropical cyclone activity, and this has been our coverage on Cyclone Emnati. Any final words from our team?
I would have a comment. Yes. One final question though. Is the cyclone already weakening at the moment? The answer is yes, because it was stronger yesterday. But again, as Coley mentioned, there could be a chance to strengthen again if Emnati can complete its Iowa replacement cycle. As for final thoughts, the same really holds true as of yesterday. The window is significant. The time window to prepare is significantly narrowing. If you are in South Central, or if you're in the East Coast, if you're in Eastern Madagascar or Southeastern Madagascar, now is the time to make your final preparations.
Or evacuate.
Evacuations, yes, that too. That's the time. There's less. We really only have about a day left before it really hits landfall and the tropical storm force impacts start to occur. So this is the time to make your preparations now.
Thank you.
And just to tap into that, again, as I was mentioning earlier on the stream, the future path for this storm is pretty uncertain. We could have it miss land, or we could have it hit central Madagascar, south central Madagascar. Either way, you have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, because you don't want to think the best will happen, even though something shifts and the worst happens. And then on my final thoughts with this, this thing is going to be bad. I really think it is. No matter what happens, you have to prepare. Rains, flooding, winds are really going to storm surge. Any threat that comes with a tropical cyclone is going to come in, and it's going to be bad. With this,
Right.
so you have to prepare.
Thank you, team, for joining us today, and thank you for watching. We'll have more updates on the Force 13 YouTube channel and on social media, Facebook and Twitter. You can also join our Discord server, Force 13, discord.gg/Force13, and we'll have videos on our channel. We'll see you again soon. Good night.